When I started, I was 13 years old, and I've been asked a million questions over the years. I don't think I've really had the chance to talk about the impact of starting a sport at such a young age and how it kind of impacts your identity. It's been a lot to process and a lot to navigate over the last over decade, I guess, being in high performance sport. But it's also been such a privilege at the same time. It's weird to think that now I'm like towards the later end of being at this level. And so I sometimes get, I don't know if like imposter syndrome is the right word for it, but it's like I still feel like I'm 20 or like I still feel like I'm 16.
Welcome to Athlete Actually, the women's sports podcast where we ask the questions athletes actually want to answer. I'm Elizabeth Montavon, a professional water skier and marketing strategist, and this show is produced by Parity, a women's sports marketing and sponsorship consultancy. Welcome to today's episode of Athlete Actually. I'm your host, Elizabeth Montavon, and today I'm joined by Marissa Papaconstantinou, a Paralympic medalist and one of Canada's top para-athletes. A three-time Paralympian representing Canada in para-athletics, Marissa won bronze in the T64 100 meters at the Tokyo Paralympic Games and has continued to build on that momentum with multiple World Championship medals, including a silver in the 200 meters in 2025. Born without her right foot, she discovered para-athletics at 11 years old after being fitted with her first running blade, and quickly emerged as one of the fastest athletes in the world in her classification. Beyond the track, Marissa has also become an important voice in the Paralympic movement, recently joining CBC's broadcast team as a special contributor for the Milano Cortina 2026 Winter Paralympic Games. Known for her competitiveness, longevity, and perspective as both an athlete and a storyteller, she's continuing to shape the future of para sport all over the world. This season of Athlete Actually is presented by DNA Vibe. DNA Vibe is a new category of wearable regenerative technology designed to support the body's natural recovery processes, trusted by athletes, trainers, and high performers who are redefining what strength, recovery, and longevity look like. DNA Vibe's patented wearable devices combine non-thermal red and near-infrared light, micromagnetic signaling, and microvibration to work in harmony with the body's natural processes to support circulation, comfort, and overall well-being, helping you move better, recover smarter, and stay in the game. If you're training hard or simply want to feel and perform your best, you can learn more at dnavibe.com/recovery. But before we get into today's conversation, I want to start with On Our Radar, one thing from the world of women's sports that's caught our attention. Here's the headline. New valuations from both Sportico and CNBC show just how dramatically the value of the WNBA is rising. The context? Well, depending on the report, the average WNBA franchise is now valued somewhere between roughly $425 and $460 million. And for the first time ever, a women's sports team has crossed the billion-dollar mark, with the Golden State Valkyries reportedly valued at a cool $1 billion. Sponsorship growth is accelerating too, with league partners reportedly up 40% year over year as more brands look to get into the ecosystem. My takeaway? What's happening in the WNBA right now is bigger than basketball. These valuations are signaling long-term confidence in women's sports as a business and proving that investment, expansion, media visibility, and brand buy-in are all starting to compound in real time. So that's what's on our radar, and this is Marissa Papaconstantinou. Marissa, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to get to know you better as an athlete through this process. This is honestly my dream. So what have you been up to lately? What's on your calendar?
Yeah, it's been honestly a very interesting year for me because I have kind of a down year for competition. There's the Commonwealth Games, but they don't even actually have my classification for my event, the 100 and the 200 meters. So I actually get to, prioritize some other things in my life, which has been really nice. Just actually in March, I was part of the CBC broadcast for the Milano Cortina Paralympic Games. So honestly, it's just been really cool to, again, dive into endeavors that I don't normally have time for in a high competition year, whether it's leading into like a world championships or Paralympic Games. So yeah, it's just been really fun to experience different parts of my life that are also like important to me and things I wanna pursue when I'm done being an athlete. So, yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm enjoying navigating all of it.
That's so incredible that you took the leap into the side of media, especially at the Paralympic level. I think that athletes make the best storytellers around sport. And so when I saw that you were a guest broadcaster for Milano Cortina, what a perfect fit that is. So I love that you've been able to add that to your resume. In the vein of athlete stories, I would love to ask you, Marissa, what is your sports story that no one has ever asked you about?
Yeah, I think, I was trying to really think about what I haven't been asked because I've been in sport for such a long time and I've been in, I guess, like the media side of things for a really long time. I'm still young, I'm only 26, but I started this all when I would say like if I start like when I started the journey, I was 13 years old and I've been asked a million questions over the years. And I think like something that I don't think I've really had the chance to talk about much is really, I guess, the impact of starting a sport at such a young age and really how it kind of impacts your identity over time and also navigating growing up and like growing up from being a teenager to an adult and kind of going through all those phases of your life, but then also like phases of being an athlete as well. It's just been a lot to process and a lot to navigate over the last over decade, I guess, being in high performance sport. But it's also been such a privilege at the same time. So it's, been a lot to navigate. But it's also very weird and strange for me because I now look at young people on my team that are, 16, 17, starting like when I really was just like kind of starting out and in the early phases of my career. It's weird to think that now I'm like more someone that's like towards the later end of being at this level. And so I sometimes get I don't know if like imposter syndrome is the right word for it, but like a I don't know what the right term for it would be, but it's like I still feel like I'm 20 and I still feel like I'm 16. I think a lot of people in my circle and in my team still look at me as like that little kid that, just like started out. And I was talking to like one of my massage therapists last week about it. And I was like, I'm 27 this year. And he's like, Marissa, this is like, that's actually sickening because I remember when you were like 15 years old and just starting out on this team. And yeah, it's just crazy how like time goes and I've also like had to navigate so much throughout
Mhm.
being a young athlete till now.
I guess we could call them child athletes. I too was a child athlete.
Yeah.
I learned my sport at 3 and then I started competing at 8, so it's been such a huge part of my identity for so long. And I think something that's kept me going is knowing that I can reinvent my athlete identity, as many times as I need to. And I think that's just a natural thing that happens whether it's intentional or not. As you grow just as a woman and as a human being, you reinvent yourself. You rebrand, if you will. Did you ever feel like you had a distinct moment where you said, okay, I've kind of got this new, evolved, maybe more grown up version of my athlete identity, or did it happen to you?
It's a really, really good question. I think like over time, I was forced into circumstances that had to make me adapt and grow up. And a lot of that happened through like injury.
Mhm.
Specifically, I would say like in 2017, I tore my hamstring at the London 2017 World Championships in the final stretch of my 200 final. And it was it was a lot because again, I was 17. That year I had really started to, I think, develop and drop my times and I was setting like personal bests every race I was getting into and it was like I felt like I was really inching my way towards the podium that season, and
Mhm.
I then started to put so much emphasis on that, and that's what became important to me, not anything else. So kind of navigating through that challenge was an eye opener, and it made me have to like rethink what's important about being an athlete and about doing high performance sport. Because when you are at your most vulnerable and everyone is watching you at your most vulnerable, it can be a really tough experience to navigate. And at the end of the day, you know, still got up and finished the race, but it obviously was not the outcome that I was like wanting or looking for. And again, it just had to make me kind of like grow up and think more maturely in that sense of like, it's not always about the outcome. It is about like the process and the journey to get there. And I've had to relearn that so many times throughout my career. That it wasn't just like one instance like that where I learned it and I was like, okay, we keep moving forward. Was no, there will be multiple more times where you have to learn this lesson. Not looking at the outcome, the final result, and compare that to your value, your worth, and what you are providing to yourself and to the world. I learned that again, like 2 years later, I got injured in that season, and then again was putting so much emphasis on podium finishes because again, it was like very much in reach. It was a very realistic goal and expectation I was setting for myself. But then again, like my life had other plans. There were things that were out of my control that took place. And I think the biggest part through that is learning how to navigate through uncontrollable circumstances. I would say that if I didn't learn those from those, they were young ages. I was only like 17, 18, 19 years old.
Okay.
Still just like finishing high school, starting university. I thought I was super mature at the time, which like I was in a way to navigate some of the experiences that I've navigated. Having it said that, it's like you look back at yourself at that age and you're like, oh my God, I knew nothing about the world and I knew nothing about myself. And yeah, so got kind of navigating through my Paris 2024 experience. Feeling really great going into the competition. There was a lot of pressure that year. Obviously, like Paralympic years and Olympic years are just like pressure cookers. No matter how you were feeling in the years leading up to it, it is like that year, it's just like everything feels different. Competition stakes are so much higher. Making the team is so much harder. There's like all these things going on. So it's definitely like on edge all season. But I think I was
Yeah.
handling it to the best of my ability and as like again a more mature athlete and like showing up to Paris and feeling like I was in great shape and in great shape to perform to then, getting COVID and then having to navigate the entire competition with an illness. And, sometimes like you can give it your all, but your all is not going to be enough. And so it's like knowing in those moments that's like you can do everything you can, but it's just not going to be enough. And that was okay. And I think that's where I realized there was so many other things I had accomplished that season that I needed to take away the heavy and the emphasis on the fact that I didn't medal at the Paralympic Games, but that, I was on billboards all over the city of Toronto that year and with my running
Yeah.
blade on. And that, like, to me, I look back at that and it's such a huge accomplishment for not just myself, but Paralympic sport because people all over Toronto and all over Canada were seeing someone in a high performance sport environment with a running blade on. There were just like moments throughout the season. I set personal best that season still. There were a lot of other things that I accomplished that it wasn't just about the medal at the end of it all. So it's like yeah, having to change that narrative around your value and your self-worth when it comes to performance. And at the end of the day, only 3 people can stand on top of the podium. And I've had the privilege to do that 5 times throughout my career. So it's just you still have to take those moments and it makes also like when those moments have happened, it makes them that much extra special because you realize how hard it is for those moments to happen. So yeah, sorry, I just like threw so much at you, but that's been it in a nutshell.
No, I love that. That is, in fact, the whole point of the show. And your perspective is absolutely brilliant. To navigate injury at a very young age on the professional stage, that's not only physical trauma, but it is a type of mental and emotional trauma. And when you're doing it with eyeballs all over you, right? Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who know what's going on in your story, and you don't really have anywhere to hide. As a young person, you're not just dealing with the trauma that's happening to you. You also start thinking about what does everybody think about me and how I'm
Yeah.
handling this trauma, right? And it's a lot, and it does force you to mature in a certain way. What would you tell the parents of a young athlete who's injured? What would you tell the coaches? How can those adults in that young athlete's life best support them from your perspective now with everything you've achieved?
That's a very good question because I think a lot of the reason why I was able to navigate all of those difficulties throughout my track experience was because of my family, my parents, my sister, my partner, like people who have just been in my corner, my coaches, all the, team that has been around me for so long. Honestly, I would tell them to give grace, but also like tough love at the same time, which is kind of like a funny combination. And there's a balance for sure. I think my family specifically was really good at giving me grace and like understanding that sometimes like it was really hard on me mentally and emotionally and like on my mental health to navigate some of those injuries and then the expectation of performing and then kind of measuring my self-value to those performances. But having it said that, there were definitely some like pity parties that were thrown throughout that time when I was like rehabbing or when I was trying to get back to being the best version of myself. They weren't having any of it. So it was a good balance of like having the support, but also having that very realistic wake up call of like this is the reality and this is what athletes at your level deal with. And we are here to support you, but you have to have a positive attitude about this and you have to be able to keep, putting one foot in front of the other because having a negative attitude is not going to help your recovery. It's not going to help your sleep. It's not going to help anything that will assist in making you better.
I think you articulated that so well, though, that it really is a balance of you need to give the individual grace because they're going to behave in ways and they're going to say things that they don't really mean because they're just going through it. But they do need that guidance and that tough love to get back on the path. And, our loved ones love us for a reason and they want us to succeed and they want us to do well. And when I think back on, some of my biggest injuries in 2022, I had a crash where I dislocated my skull. And so coming back from that was a nightmare and I had no confidence. And I was certainly very moody because that was a head injury. But I had people in my corner who they gave me that tough love. And they pushed me when the time was right because they knew physically that I was fine and I was there. And it was, that grace to emotionally heal while pushing me physically and helping me feel safe. I feel like there's just a lot of parallels there between your comeback stories and my injury comeback stories. Now, you said something really interesting earlier, and that was that sometimes you still feel like your 16-year-old self as an athlete. And I feel the same way at times. There's certain goals that I set as a teenager that I'm still chasing. And it's fun to satisfy those goals for your inner teenager. Is there anything that very young Marissa still has on the to-do list or on the goal list, if you will? This episode of Athlete Actually is supported by Sport Certified Powered by iHerb, a collection of supplements rigorously tested for quality, purity, and performance. For athletes, what you put in your body matters. Sport Certified Powered by iHerb products are tested to meet strict standards, giving you confidence that what's on the label is what's in the bottle. From protein and hydration to essential vitamins and recovery support, their lineup is built for active lifestyles. You can explore the full Sport Certified collection at sportcertified.com.
Yeah, I definitely have big hopes for LA 2028. That will be likely my maybe my last Paralympic Games. I try not to set like too many plans in stone because you never know where life will take you. But that would be games number 4 for me. So it's like definitely a really good roster and it's been a really great career. So yeah, that would be kind of like the benchmark of when I would start to reassess like what I want to do after that. But until then, it's going to just be all locked in on being able to perform my absolute best that I can. But my biggest hope and my goal is to be able to perform in LA and leave the track knowing that I did everything I can. I prepared the best I possibly could and ran the fastest that I possibly could have at that point in time. Obviously, there's podium finish goals and big dreams and aspirations like that, but the more mature athlete that stands in front of you today versus the naive 16-year-old is that you can't control everything that happens and you can't control what other people do either. So all you can do is focus on yourself, and the best way to make those goals as realistic as possible is to recover the best you can, to train the hardest and the smartest that you can, um, and to just be able to bring everything that you possibly have to when it matters the most. And so that's what I've learned, and that's what I try to put most of my focus and my emphasis on. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I wanted to be on top spot of that podium in LA as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gold all day for our girl Marissa. um, Now, when we talk about your sport, it's an individual sport. And the thing I find interesting about individual sports as an individual athlete myself is that you really can't play defense, right? It is all offense. You can't control anybody else, and you can't really do anything to impact anybody else. If you do, you're starting to flirt with cheating, and that's not what we're here to do, right? So it is offense all day long. What is that like for you? Because I find it's a type of mental and emotional endurance that doesn't really get spoken about a lot. Would you agree?
Yeah, it totally is. And I think it can be, if you allow it to be, it can be incredibly lonely.
Hmm.
And track again being an individual sport, like you're out there by yourself when it comes time to perform and compete. But I treat it as a team sport as much as I possibly can. And I view it as a team sport as much as I possibly can. I show up to training every day and I have a group of teammates that cheer me on, that I have to run with, to get through workouts with. And that's what really does make the environment positive and fun. There are days where it's painful. This morning was one of them. I had just had like a 2-hour nap before getting on this call because it just like took me out.
Yeah.
But I had one of my training partners, Shariana Haas. She's awesome. She competed in Paris 2024, and she's young and someone that's like really hungry and coming through the ranks. And it's just been really awesome to have her as my training partner. And so she's someone that just keeps me motivated, and we motivate each other, and we just have fun together at the end of the day too. So, yeah, I think it's about treating it as a team sport as much as possible to not feel that burnout and the burden and the heaviness of like the fact that when you do go on the starting line and it's time to compete, it is just you.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely love that. And, something I want to circle back to here is when you spoke about your Paris 2024 experience, there were challenges, there were struggles, and performance-wise, it didn't go the way you wanted. But you were on billboards all over Canada, which means your running blade was on billboards all over Canada. And that visibility into para sport is so important, and
Mhm.
especially for youth in sports. Can you tell me a little bit about where you stand on advocacy in para sport?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my role beyond just being an athlete, it's someone that wants to work in the media, because that I think has a lot of power to change people's minds and attitudes. And I think being part of the CBC broadcast for Milano Cortina was just like an incredible opportunity to do so. And we had so much positive feedback from like people online, the general public, and also the numbers don't lie as well when you're talking about millions of Canadians tuning in every day to watch daytime, prime time, all of it to watch, Paralympic sport. That's truly where I feel like the movement is really going in the right direction. In terms of the sport itself, there is so much development that's already taken place even since I started. The competitiveness, the high performance mentality that all of these athletes take into year after year, competition after competition, and how the sport is growing from the grassroots level up is really incredible. But again, like I just look at it from like a top down approach, and if you're putting this content on people's TV screens and they're consuming this content, it's just gonna allow the sport to grow further, because there's gonna be hopefully like a little Marissa out there that saw, either me racing in Paris or watched the last Winter Paralympic Games and felt really inspired to try parasport. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day. It's growing it for the next generation, leaving it better than you found it. And it's changed so much since I started. And
Yeah.
that's something really incredible that I will be able to say confidently that when I leave sport, I will leave it better than I found it.
That's so beautiful. And I want to jump up and down right now if it wasn't inappropriate that you got so much positive feedback and such high viewership numbers after Milano Cortina. I mean, that is exactly what any of us who work in sport want to hear. And it's what the para movement really, really deserves. Now, on the show, I've had Kate Brim, who is a Team USA hand cyclist and a Paralympian. And I asked her this question, and I would love to ask you, especially somebody who has worked in the storytelling side of parasport, something that just doesn't get asked enough. And that is when media speaks on Paralympians and para-athletes, they tend to center a lot of the story around the disability. And I understand giving visibility to those disabilities. That's super important. But they miss so much of the total athlete story. So given the experience you've had in broadcasting and as an athlete, what advice would you give to others in the media to tell a more holistic and interesting and full picture story about these incredible para-athletes?
That's a good question. I always look at the disability, the injury as context, but it's not the full story.
Right.
You obviously don't want to shy away from some of these stories because they are incredible. Like, there is no doubt that someone who overcame a very traumatic injury to then being a Paralympic champion is like that pathway is uncomprehendable to average person, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're like, how did that happen? And you obviously want to give those stories the space they need. Having had said that, there is a balance of advocating in terms of the performance and
Mhm.
what the athlete is actually doing at the end of the day. I think sometimes it can be too much emphasis on the sob story maybe, or like the
Mm.
inspiration porn. We talked about that a lot during the Paralympic Games actually on CBC.
Yeah.
And I think there's again, a time and place for it, but at the end of the day, a lot of the athletes that make it to the Paralympic Games also want to be recognized for their incredible athletic performances. And so it can be acknowledged, but it cannot be the entire picture and the entire story that's told because there's so much to share about these athletes, and they
Yeah.
deserve to be shown as high performance athletes and not just someone who overcame and made it to the games.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you say that, if somebody wanted to learn how to speak more intelligently around the performance of a para athlete, you can just ask, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can ask questions. The thing it's really tough with disability as a whole because everybody does have a very different lived experience. I'm not
Hmm.
acquired, I'm congenital. I was born missing my foot, so I don't have any trauma. I don't know life any differently. I wore a prosthetic as soon as I started walking. Having it said that, someone that has a very different lived experience might feel differently towards how they want to share their story. And so I think it's always best practice just to ask what you're comfortable with and go from there. But having it said that, again, there's in a fail safe option to just talk about their athletic performance.
Right.
Ask questions about, that you would ask an able-bodied athlete. Why does it have to be so different or so much emphasis on the disability? And so
Hmm.
I think that there's definitely many ways to go around it, but I think I just always go back to the fact that a lot of these athletes just want to be recognized for the fact that they do something really cool and they're really good at their sport.
Yeah, and that's excellent media coaching for anybody who works in media or has an interest in it. Athletes love talking about their sport. Athletes love talking about their athletic career. So be respectful, but just ask questions is where I come from in sport because we all want to learn and we all want to know and we all want to share. What would you say surprised you the most about working in the broadcasting side at Milano Cortina?
That's a really good question because I was definitely like, I prepare quite a bit, especially as a summer athlete talking about winter sport.
Yeah.
But I was not prepared for the amount of work I would be doing for such small bits on air and like these
Oh.
like really short segments, and you have like 2 minutes to get your thought out, and it has to be like well articulated, and it has to like hook the viewer in, and it has to have like all your points, and then you have to tie it up in a nice little bow or like throw it off to something else. There was definitely like a lot of that going on, and I did study sports media in university, but it was on a much smaller scale, so, like, the big studio, the producer in your ear,
Mhm.
the lots of moving parts and things can, like, change on a dime, and what you wanted to say originally might get cut, or you might have to speak longer than you had originally planned. There's just like so many moving parts all the time. So I would say that was definitely a big eye opener for me, but I was really happy to navigate through it because it was just so fun and high energy. And it also gave me the similar like high and feeling you get from competing. So that part of it was really cool because again, this is something I want to pursue when I'm done sport. So to have that same feeling that competition gives me was really reassuring to know that when I do decide to retire from being an athlete, that my life after it is still going to be fun and exciting. And I hope I can just continue on that pathway and make that a possibility for myself.
I just love that you found another passion that still is in sports and very sport relevant that fulfills you in the same way. That's such an important part of an athlete
Mhm.
journey is, we all retire at some point.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do afterward? And does it need to be something completely different from sport, or do you still want to be in the world of sport? And you're glowing right now. I can tell it truly authentically is a good space for you. Marissa, we've talked so much about your career thus far. Tell me a little bit about what's on the horizon for you. What do you got coming?
Yeah, so this year I do have some competitions coming up. A lot of them are more locally. National championships are in June. And then I do plan on doing a small European tour in the start of July. And then that will kind of just like wrap up my short season. We have a early world championships next year in June. So I think the plan is to kind of wrap up this season a little earlier than normal and then get started earlier than normal to work towards World Championships. I believe they're going to be in Uzbekistan in June next year. So that's going to be pretty cool, like a cool experience.
Yeah,
And
very
there will
cool.
also be the Pan American Games as well in August in Lima. And I've actually never been to the Pan Am Games before because, like, the timing of them in the past never worked out for me. So it will be really cool to go to the Pan Am Games and probably end my season with that. And then again, take a little break and then start to gear up for LA 28. It's kind of crazy that that's all in like the same kind of little block. Like 2 years
Yeah.
away is it's insane how fast time goes.
It's going to be a fast 2 years. I know
Yeah.
that much. Incredible. Well, I can't wait to see everything you accomplish along the way. But before we wrap, I want to take us to our segment called The Last Lap, which I always feel really silly saying that to athletes who actually run laps or do anything that actually has laps in it. I'm like, oh,
Well,
this
the
is
good
too
thing is
cliche.
I never run a full lap around the track. So
True. Okay, so I'm not being totally cliche right now.
no.
We're still good. Okay, so the last lap. Marissa, if you were the answer to a sports trivia question, what would you like that sports trivia question to be?
Okay, I think I did think about this and something that did kind of like start off my career a little bit was which Canadian athlete was in the Ontario Science Centre?
Interesting. That has got to be one of our most unique ones. So which Canadian athlete was in the Ontario Science Centre?
Yeah, and for context, when I was 13, I was basically like a large photo of me with my running blade was in the human bionics exhibit at the Ontario Science Centre. So just like about technology and the way the human body works. So yeah, that would probably be my trivia question.
That is so cool. You've been famous for a long time.
I wouldn't say famous.
Oh my gosh, Marissa, I have so enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Athlete Actually. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share with someone who should be part of the conversation. To learn more about how brands are partnering with pro women athletes, visit ParityNow.com.